some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
This hour, because there's been a development in the search for Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie.
There are some puzzling new developments tonight in the ongoing search for Nancy Guthrie.
It has been a minute. I know that. And I know you have been watching this case from every angle while this channel was quiet. But I was not going to come back with another update video, another recap, another timeline you have already heard. I was waiting for the one piece that ties everything together. The piece that answers the question this series has been circling for 3 months. Why? And this week, a claim surfaced that, if verified, changes the entire landscape of this case. According to a report published by Hiden Times, Annie Guthrie asked her mother for a loan shortly before Nancy disappeared from her home on February 1. Nancy reportedly said no. That claim has not been confirmed by law enforcement. It has not been addressed publicly by the family and it has not been denied, but it landed in the middle of a case where the financial questions surrounding Annie and her husband Tommaso Cioni have been accumulating for months. The property values, the power of attorney, the boxes leaving NY's house, the vehicle held for 40 days. And it gave all of those questions a starting point they did not have before. This video follows the money, not speculation, not rumor. The documented financial trail that runs through this case, property records, legal instruments, law enforcement actions, and the one conversation between a mother and her daughter that may have set everything in motion. For 3 months, I have been showing you how Nancy was taken. The 3 weekends of surveillance, the cameras that went dark. The flower pots positioned in the dark by someone who had been on that patio before. The security gate that does not open from the outside, the medication left sitting on the counter, the ransom notes containing details that only someone present during the crime would know. Every video on this channel has answered a piece of the how. But the why, the reason someone would execute that level of operation against a woman in her 80s while she slept, that has been the missing piece until now. So, let me walk through the financial picture, not the rumors, the documented details that have surfaced over the past several weeks because when you line them up in order, they stop looking random. NY's house in the Catalina Foothills is valued at roughly $1 million. That is public record. It sits in one of the most desirable neighborhoods in the Tucson area. Nancy had been living there for decades. Annie and Tommaso's place is about 4 miles away. Estimated value around $650,000. So, there is a gap about $350,000 between the home of the mother and the home of the daughter who lived nearest to her. On its own, that gap means nothing. Parents often have more than their children. That is normal. But when you are trying to understand why someone would target Nancy specifically, why this woman, why this house, why this level of planning, the value of what she owned becomes relevant. Because the most common motive in cases where an elderly person is harmed by someone in their own circle is not rage. It is not revenge. It is access to assets that become available when the owner is no longer present. Then there is the power of attorney. An unverified document circulated online showing that in May of 2025, 8 months before Nancy disappeared, Tommaso signed a durable power of attorney naming Annie as his agent over financial and property matters. People with legal backgrounds weighed in publicly and said, this is standard. It is the kind of document that gets signed during a mortgage refinance or a property transfer. One person commented that it was clearly related to a loan closing between Tommaso and Annie and nothing more. And maybe that is all it is, but the timing places it in a sequence. May 2025, power of attorney signed. Sometime before January 31st, Annie reportedly asks Nancy for money and is turned down. January 31st, Nancy has dinner at Annie and Tommaso's house. Tommaso drives her home. February 1st, Nancy is gone. You can dismiss any single item in that sequence as coincidence, but the sequence itself has a direction, and the direction is financial. Now, the property itself, because what is happening at NY's house right now is generating questions that nobody in the family has answered. Photographs surfaced in recent weeks showing people at NY's residence loading items into vehicles. Annie's Honda CR-V was visible in those images. Boxes were being carried out. Nancy has not been declared dead. No death certificate exists. No probate has been initiated. No court has authorized anyone to remove personal property from the home of a woman whose disappearance is still classified as an active criminal investigation. And then JLR Investigates, a true crime reporter who has been documenting this case on the ground, posted something that spread fast. The post was simple. Someone plans to move into Nancy Guthrie's home. Who could it be? The response that got the most attention was even simpler. Someone who cannot pay their own property taxes. There is no confirmation that Annie and Tommaso are planning to occupy NY's house. But between the boxes leaving the property, the repeated presence of Annie's vehicle, and the fact that Tommaso was already observed moving through the house and garage with visible familiarity on the same day ransom notes hit TMZ, the public has connected its own dots. And the picture those dots form is a family preparing to assume control of a property that does not legally belong to them yet because its owner has not been declared dead. Now, let me connect the financial thread to something I have covered before, but never from this angle. The vulnerability. I have talked in previous videos about all the protections that were absent from NY's life before she was taken. The dog that had died, the camera system that was not recording, the hearing aids that came out every night, the medication sitting on the counter, no caretaker, no alarm, no medical alert. But here is what I have not said until now. Every one of those missing protections costs money to fix. A camera subscription runs about $15 a month. A medical alert pendant costs less than $1 a day. An overnight aid through a home health agency in Tucson is available for a few hundred a week. These are not extraordinary expenses. They are basic precautions that families with elderly parents living alone implement as a matter of course. The Guthrie family had the resources. Savannah is one of the highest paid broadcast journalists in the country. The combined family income across 3 siblings is more than sufficient to cover every single one of those safeguards with a phone call and a credit card. And none of it was done. Nancy was left in a $1 million house with no security, no monitoring, no overnight help, and no way to call for assistance once her hearing aids came out at night. If Annie was in a position where she needed to ask her 84-year-old mother for money and was refused, then the question of why nobody invested in basic protections for Nancy takes on a different dimension. It is no longer just an oversight. It becomes a situation that someone under financial pressure may not have seen as a priority. Or, and this is the harder version of the question, it becomes something that was permitted to continue because a vulnerable, unmonitored, unprotected mother in a $1 million home is easier to reach than one with cameras, alarms, and a caretaker sleeping in the next room. I am not stating that as fact. I am laying out the logic that the financial evidence invites, and it is the same logic that investigators apply when they see this combination of factors in any case. Let me walk through the night of January 31st one more time, but this time through the lens of. That ride is documented. Timestamps, in-car footage, a driver who cooperated fully with the FBI. Everything about the trip to Annie's house is on the record. The trip home is not. Nancy did not take an Uber back. Tommaso was behind the wheel. He decided when they departed. He chose the route. He determined the moment Nancy reached her residence. And his account of what happened at the door, walking her in, watching the garage seal behind her stands alone. No camera recorded the arrival. No neighbor witnessed it. No app generated a timestamp. If the loan refusal is real, if Annie asked for money in the days or weeks before this dinner and Nancy turned her down, then that evening carries a weight that goes beyond a family gathering. It means the last person Nancy had dinner with is the daughter she refused. It means the last person to drive her home is the husband of the daughter she refused. And it means the 14 hours that followed from 9:50 p.m. to noon the next day, during which nobody from that household contacted Nancy by phone, by text, or by driving 4 miles to check on her, occurred after a financial request was denied. 14 hours is an extraordinary gap. Nancy was 84. She had a pacemaker. She needed medication at 10 p.m. that the sheriff said could prove fatal to Skip. She was about to remove her hearing aids and become completely deaf to the world around her. She was alone in a house with no active cameras, no alarm, no medical alert, and no caretaker. The people who drove her home knew all of this. And from the moment the garage closed until a friend called the next morning because Nancy had not appeared for church, nothing. No contact whatsoever. In families where a parent is aging alone, the good night call is automatic. The morning check-in is routine. A 3-second text, "Home safe, love you," is the kind of small act that costs nothing and exists because people care. That ritual was absent on the night of January 31st. And its absence created the exact operational window that whoever took Nancy required. No interruption, no unexpected visit, no phone call that might have been answered by someone other than Nancy. A clean 14-hour block where the only mechanism for discovering that something had gone wrong was a church friend who noticed an empty chair on a Sunday morning live stream. The financial lens does not change the facts of the timeline. It changes what the timeline might mean because the absence of a good night call from a daughter who just had dinner with her mother looks different when that daughter was recently denied a loan. It stops looking like forgetfulness. It starts looking like distance. The kind of distance that exists between two people who had a difficult conversation that has not been resolved, or the kind of distance that serves a different purpose entirely. Now, the 911 call, because this is where the investigation tells you more by what it is withholding than by what it has released. The call that reported Nancy missing has never been made public. Not the recording, not a transcript, not even a summary of what was said. In Arizona, 911 recordings are public records. Reporters can request them. In most high-profile missing person cases, the recording surfaces within days, sometimes hours. 3 months into this investigation, nobody has heard what Annie said when she called to report her mother was gone. Retired Detective Bob Guy, appearing on Chris Medana's Interview Room, addressed this directly. He said there is probably investigative information on that recording that detectives do not want the public to hear. He said not to hold your breath waiting for it. And then he said something that carries more weight than anything else. He suggested the call might not surface until a trial date approaches. A trial. That word implies charges. It implies an arrest. It implies that the trajectory of this case, despite 3 months of public silence and apparent stagnation, leads to a courtroom. And the 911 call is being held as evidence for that proceeding. Now, think about what might be on the recording that would justify sealing it. The obvious elements, Annie's voice, the time of the call, the words she chose, but also the less obvious ones. How much detail did she volunteer before the dispatcher asked? Did she describe what she found inside the house? Did she mention the blood? Did she mention the open doors? Did she say anything that a person arriving at a scene for the first time would not yet know? And there is the 7-minute gap in the published timeline. The family arrived at NY's house at 11:56 a.m. The 911 call was placed at 12:03 p.m. 7 minutes between walking up to the home of a missing 84-year-old woman and picking up the phone to call for help. If they found blood on the front porch within the first minute of arriving and the blood was in a location that would be difficult to miss, then 6 minutes pass between seeing evidence of a crime and reporting it. What were they doing during those 6 minutes? Searching the house, calling each other, discussing what to say, cleaning something, touching something they should not have touched. The 911 recording likely captures what happened immediately before and during the call. Background noise, other voices, the emotional state of the caller, and all of it is locked away because investigators decided the public cannot hear it yet. There is also an open debate among experts about how many people were physically involved in removing Nancy from the house. Detective Guy believes it required at least 2. The logistics of carrying someone with limited mobility through a house, past a security gate, and into a vehicle at 2 in the morning are too complex for one person to manage silently. Former FBI agent Jim Clement disagrees. He assessed from the blood pattern on the front steps that a single suspect is more likely, reasoning that a second person would have prevented Nancy from ending up on the ground outside. C.C. Moore's DNA assessment, Nancy plus 2 or more unknowns, may eventually resolve this question. If the hair and the surface samples identify multiple contributors, Guy Liam's theory gains forensic backing. If they identify one, Clement's analysis holds. Either way, the answer is sitting in a laboratory, and the people waiting most anxiously for that answer may not be the ones the public expects. Now, where the investigation stands, because the silence from official channels is telling you something, whether they intend it to or not, Nanos has not held a proper press conference in over a month. On May 1st, the 3-month mark, he appeared in a short video clip saying he believes someone out there knows what happened. Call us. That is the statement of a department that is either empty-handed or sitting on something it cannot yet disclose. NBC built a protocol at the Today Show specifically for this case. If news about Nancy breaks during a live broadcast, Savannah is pulled from the set. A different anchor handles the story on camera. The information is delivered to Savannah privately. That protocol was used on April 15. Savannah was removed mid-broadcast after teasing a segment with Anne Hathaway. She returned later without explanation. 2 days after that, she was absent entirely. Networks do not build those procedures for cases they believe are going cold. They build them for cases where they expect a moment, an arrest, a body, an identification that will hit the family in real time on national television. The protocol is preparation. And preparation means NBC believes this case is heading somewhere. Brian Anton told Parade on May 3 that cooperation between Nanos and the FBI has improved from where it was, but Puma County Board of Supervisors Vice Chair Dr. Matthew Hines publicly accused Nanos of hindering that cooperation because of a personal grudge against the Bureau. A sitting county official said the sheriff let personal feelings interfere with a federal investigation into the abduction of an 84-year-old woman. That accusation has not been retracted. And Ed Smart, Elizabeth Smart's father, appeared on NewsNation and chose his words carefully. He said the Guthrie have supposedly been cleared. Supposedly, that is a word you use when you are respecting the official position while keeping the door open to the possibility that it is wrong. The DNA is at the FBI. The hair sample, the one the sheriff's initial team missed and the federal agents recovered on a return visit, is undergoing analysis that may include processing at Astria Forensics, the San Francisco lab that helped convict the Long Island serial killer, Rex Heuermann. A CUDIS search already came back negative, meaning whoever left biological material inside NY's home has never been in the criminal justice system. No prior arrests, no convictions, a clean record that eliminates career criminals and random drifters. It describes someone living an ordinary life. Someone whose name would not ring any alarm bells. Someone who might attend family dinners and drive elderly women home and sign powers of attorney and ask for loans that get turned down. 3 months, no arrest, no named suspect. A mother who reportedly said no to a loan from her daughter and then disappeared from $1 million home. A daughter whose vehicle was seized and held for 40 days of forensic examination. A son-in-law who controlled the final ride home on a trip with no independent verification. A power of attorney signed 8 months before the abduction. Property being cleared from a home whose owner has not been declared dead. A 911 call sealed by investigators for reasons a retired detective says are tied to a future trial. DNA from multiple unidentified people with clean records. And an investigation that has gone quiet in the way investigations go quiet when something is being assembled behind closed doors. Every video before this one showed you how Nancy Guthrie was taken. This one shows you why someone would go through all of it. And the answer starts with a conversation between a mother and her daughter about money. Let me stack the financial thread one final time beginning to end because when you see it assembled as a single sequence, the picture is difficult to look away from. May 2025, a durable power of attorney is signed, giving Annie authority over Tommaso's financial and property affairs. Legal experts say it is routine for real estate transactions.